Hello, community. I think you got nothing except the blue screen. Thank you, Josh, for the comment. So, yeah. So I guess my brain is not fully back from being sick. I thought, hey, let's do this. You missed my whole intro. It was terrible. Okay. So, hello, Josh. And hello, the rest of you that may still be here. I'm sorry. Um, Sometimes these things sneak up on me, and I'm looking at my camera, and I have, my camera is fold out because I'm on a new camera today. Normally, I'm on, my webcam on the Mac, so I'm staring at a new camera, and I see my face. It's all good, but you guys did not see me, and that's it's not good. So I apologize for that. So I'll just start over. Um, App World is I had it on the ticker. I'll just do a banner here. App World, February 6th through 8th. We're going to do it. And the DevCentral team, most of the DevCentral team is going to be there. Aubrey, at least the faces you see in content, Aubrey, myself, Boo, we're going to be there. A couple of our team that supports the platform is going to be there, I think. And so, but anyway, Leslie, our community program manager, she's going to be there. And so it's going to be a great time. Obviously, there's way more than just the DevCentral team from F5s that's going to be there. So if you have not registered, get out there, register, and join us. And then also, if you have just engaged with us here in the streams and chat on whether it's LinkedIn or YouTube or watched on Twitter, that's great. We love it that you do. But if you want to dive a little bit deeper than what we can cover while we're live, or when we're releasing pre-recorded videos out on YouTube, join us in the community, community.f5.com. The DevCentral community is vibrant. We have just a ton of people who are ready to answer questions for you, whether they're F5 employees or really more so, your community of peers that are out there who are engaged and ready to help, and it's great. And so, whether you have questions or you just want to come out and learn, you want to grab snippets of code, we've got the code share, we've got forums, we've got articles, and so join us out there in the community, community.f5.com. All right, so now that we're all here, and I'm here, which is it's kind of a boring live stream if you're just looking at the blue screen. So today what we're going to talk about is migrating and deploying BegIP configurations as AS3 declarations. We were going to do just some analysis and stuff back on Monday, and then do the migrations and deploy. But with me being out sick, I just decided let's go ahead and try and tackle all of that this hour. So we'll try and jump in. One thing I wanted to do before we do that is I had an issue the last couple of days, and I'm learning BegIP Next. And so you have the central manager, you have the BegIP Next instances, and starting in January, we're going to dive deep hard on DevCentral in BegIP Next. I'm going to have a slew of articles and videos, and we'll get into code eventually. But BegIP Next is coming. It's GA already for Local Traffic Manager and the Web App Firewall. And so you can go out and download that, start playing with it, start moving some lab workloads to it, and start to get comfortable in that arena. But I had an issue with I had my first version of Central Manager deployed, and then they released a new version. So I was wanting to go from 20.0.1 to 20.0.2, and so I tried to upload the file, and the file failed. And it's new technology, and it's like, well, great, they just haven't figured out all the edge cases of Central Manager. And so I'm asking internally, we're working through some things. There's some other people that are having an issue, but it's different because their environment's different. And then one guy's like, hey, I was trying to, okay, maybe it's just a GUI problem. Let me try to upload the files with curl. And then curl was just like, started the transfer and then stopped. And I was like, well, that's weird. And they said, hey, sometimes curl will not show you, if you didn't do the -v option or whatever, what's going on. So maybe take a packet capture. And I'm like, hello, I'm a network engineer. Packet captures are my jam, right? And so on that, it took the packet capture, and lo and behold, the ICMP hey, you need to fragment this traffic. Messages were there, and I just didn't troubleshoot it because I was pointing the finger at the new technology. And I think that's a challenge sometimes. Like, we jump to conclusions. So I had a couple quotes here. From Dwight D. Eisenhower. The search for a scapegoat is the easiest of all hunting expeditions. And then from Harold Acton, some people take no mental exercise apart from jumping to conclusions. And that's what I did. And so, I put it out on LinkedIn, but, there's discipline in troubleshooting. And sometimes I don't follow the disciplined approach, and I would have solved my problem days earlier, and actually gotten, through that first initial experience with, a lot quicker with upgrading CM if I just followed, a standard disciplined approach to troubleshooting problems. And so it ended up Central Manager's fine. It wasn't the problem at all. It was VMware Fusion and the TSO setting within the TCP stack on my Mac. So changing TSO to disabled, boom, everything started transferring. It was all good. And so, just a comment on doing life as a technologist. Troubleshooting is one of those things that we should embrace and do it in a disciplined way instead of pointing fingers, especially at new stuff that we don't understand. Because I tend to be in that jumping to conclusions crowd with new stuff, especially. Michael, hello, welcome to the show. Of course, Josh, you saved me with your comment. Hey, don't really see what you're doing, and Jose as well. Welcome to the show. And okay, next up, let's talk about agenda today, because we're gonna move pretty quickly. What we've already done is we introduced AS3. What is it, and how does it work generally? And then last Thursday, Ben came and shared all the VSCode goodness with us that we'll be using a lot today. And then today, we're going to install VSCode, the F5 extension, the iRules editor. We don't need it for this show, but we'll go ahead and put it on there. And then ACC Chariot, which is the AS3 config conversion tool. And then Chariot's the wrapper for VS Code to do that. And then we're going to install that latest AS3 on my local big IP. We're going to review some config apps, look at any diagnostic issues. We're going to migrate configs to AS3 and evaluate those declarations. And then we're going to actually deploy one to my local big IP. And so what we're not going to do today is the final two steps that we had in the show. It's just too much to get through. I'm going to move those things to. Looks like my slides got messed up a little bit here. But anyway, migration strategies and the top issues on refactoring before converting and deploying. We're not going to get to that today. I'm going to move that to the best practices show, down the line. And so we'll come back to that. All right. Let me not do that. Let me then let's get on to. Let me do this. I'm going to slide over here and move to the other machine to actually add that in. That's not what I wanted to look at. This way. Okay. And let me go ahead and add that in. There we go. And I'm going to make myself small here in the corner. All right. So we're going to actually get VS Code installed here. Maybe. And so let's throw that in applications and go ahead and I do want to open that. So that was easy. Installing VS Code is not a challenging thing, except where is it going? You always worry about doing that stuff live. Let's get that moving, because then you got additional stuff to troubleshoot. Okay. So, it found all my old stuff. That's cool. All right. So, it already has my big IP. Well, that was embarrassing. I uninstalled it, thought it would throw all my old stuff away, but we'll go ahead and come out here to the extensions. This is the process you want. Once you have VS Code, the F5 extension down here. This is the one you want. F5 DevCentral, the F5 extension, V3 15.1. I have latest. And so, I'm not going to disable it because it's already there. But if I didn't have it, then you would just install. No big deal there. The other things that we want to install here are, we go to ACC Chariot. This is the next one you want. I'll put the links for all of these in a thing. So that I've installed, but to install, you can install another version. I think V121 is the latest. I opened an issue on that because ACC in GitHub anyway, the latest version there is 124. And so we're like 3 releases behind on here. So Ben's got an issue to hopefully get that updated to the latest that was released to GitHub. We do have something I'm going to show you at the end of the show as well that is uses ACC internally, and we'll take a look at migrations on that front towards the end after we get done with the VSCode side. All right, and of course I mentioned the iRules extension too. There's a few out there. The one by Bitwise Cook is the one you want. And how does that only have 7 ratings? If you are using this extension, go out and give that a major thumbs up for James, because this thing's awesome. But then, if you're writing iRules at all, install this extension. You'll thank me later. All right. So the next thing that we wanted to do is we actually wanted to connect to a big IP. I have one. And so if you're going to add a host, let me go ahead and just blow that host away. Let me see admin at 2.115. All right. And then if I click here, it'll ask me for my password, super secret. Failed authentication. Oh, I'm going to make a liar out of myself. Let's see, admin. Oh, do I need to do root because it's SSH? Hold on. I'm going to make a liar out of myself. Clear passwords. Okay, let me just trash it. Let's see. Why is that not letting me? Huh. Let me give that another try. Nope. Don't do that. Give me a second here. Did you turn it off and turn it on? There we go. Password. There we go. Woo. Thought that was going to be a quick end to our show. Actually, we could do a lot of the show without actually connecting to the big IP. But all right, so we have an active big IP, and the next thing we wanted to do is to be able to install a toolchain component. So we can look at AS3, and we have a lot of versions here. Doesn't look like I have any installed. So if I can just click. And I said this on Ben's show. If you didn't join us for VSCode, the VSCode show, that's one of those things to where, I built scripts to be able to, upload files that I personally downloaded from GitHub. So I took the manual steps to download files, and then scripts and pointed them locally to go ahead and upload these and then install the RPMs. It's literally a checkbox in not even a checkbox. I just find the version I want and click go, and it makes it happen. So it's waiting for that job to complete right now, and looks like it's doing some things. Boom. We got a green light here saying that we are installed. So great. So, in a matter of just minutes and most of those minutes were me fumbling around trying to figure out, what I'm doing wrong. None of it was any problem with the tool, and boom, within just a couple of clicks, we're good to go. Matus, welcome to the show. And so, let me move that. There we go. Get that out of our way. And then next thing we wanted to do, okay, we got everything installed. So the next thing I wanted to do is actually what Ben recommended on is being able to pull in a UCS. Well, I don't really have anything on that big IP yet. There's a couple things, but I upgraded my Mac from an Intel Mac to an Apple Silicon Mac, and then found out that you can't run all the big IPs in VMware Fusion on Apple Silicon, which made me really sad. And so all the stuff that I had hoped to migrate from my old Mac to my new Mac for work, I wasn't able to do that. But I do have an iMac that I use for video editing, and so I do have some things on that, but the old stuff I still haven't migrated to it. Anyway, I don't know why I'm telling you all that, other than the fact that I don't have much on my local big IP that's built into the iMac yet. But I do have an older image that I use, and so we're going to pull that in and take a look at that. All right, so let me go to downloads. And UCS. All right. So now we're just going to spend some time here in Config Explorer. Diagnostics are enabled. And this is where Ben showed us that, if you add diagnostic rules in here, and there's, quite a few, 350 lines so how many per lines? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So about 735, about 50 rules in there today, or placeholders for some rules, looks like. And so, that is something that you can change yourself. So if you do have, I talked to a customer at one of the road shows for Big IP Next, and he said he does all kinds of validation, not necessarily just of the way that objects are built, but how they're named. And so they have a very specific nomenclature. And so doing rule validation in that way would be something that would be helpful in this. And they have not moved to AS3 yet, so it's all rules that would, for him today, against configs. But it's something that, when the transition to AS3 objects happens, something that can be done here in VSCode. So that's kind of cool. All right, so let's take a look at what we have. We have our sources in my config. I've got, a big IP.conf, big IP_base.conf, gtm.conf, script.conf, user.conf, and then of course I have a partition in bizcrit for business critical, and then a user alert.conf. So one of the things when you're evaluating all of your applications, which is really cool, is that I don't always know where all of the config that you see when you do a TMSH list, where all that lives in the file system, because it's pulling all of that in, but you don't necessarily know where all the components sit. This is kind of handy in VS Code to be able to pull that in, because then you can see, it's a quick analysis engine for yourself to be able to see how all those pieces in your configuration then get sent to file system. Partitions, I've got bizcrit and common. One of those is red, so I have some things that are not good from a diagnostic standpoint in common, and those are some of these objects. Bizcrit, I've got that object and tell me, you know, so this is more of a, I guess, a warning than it is a bad thing, it being yellow instead of red. That's like, hey, you've gotten our rule, make sure that you're reviewing that for compatibility. And that's where I want to talk about compatibility with what. In some of these rules that are in the diagnostics, they're for moving big IP config to distributed cloud. So maybe you're moving components of big IP to load balancers in regional edges, or you need to have some kind of service policies or whatever. And so some of those rules are for that purpose. They wouldn't necessarily lend themselves to being helpful if you're just moving from a big IP standard config to a big IP AS3 declaration based config. And so that's one of those things where you're looking at the diagnostics. What exactly is the diagnostic telling you? It might not be bad in your situation. And so that's another issue that I added to the F5 extension out on GitHub. It's like, hey, would it be possible for us to support rule sets so that we could, checkbox or whatever, hey, I want this for AS3 for a big IP, or AS3 for a big IP next, or for Nginx or whatever. And so you have an idea of what you can enable and disable. Right now, it's just a large set of rules. So, just know that when you're going here. And of course, again, none of it's going to prevent you from making configuration changes from your config to AS3. It's just a diagnostic. It's not a limiting diagnostic. It's something to keep in mind. And okay, so we can take a look at some of these applications. So let me look at this. Let me just do like a normal port 80 type VIP. This is config. And so I have a port 80 destination, and I've got a pool in here, Nerd Life, and we've got auto map on, VLANs are enabled, and do we say which VLANs to enable that on? Okay, so VLANs are enabled, but I don't see VLANs actually activated. So maybe that's no actual VLAN is going to listen on that. So that might be a VIP to VIP. In fact, I think it is. It's the back end of the VIP to VIP. So I don't want anybody connecting directly to this virtual server. It's got to come from the front end. And so it's got two pool members with a monitor on there, and then it's got two nodes defined for those pool members. So the super cool thing, if you missed the show with Ben, is I can just right click, convert this to AS3, and boom, it's a right click and done. So there wasn't anything concerning in here to me at all. Let's move this split right. All right. So here's where we can just do kind of an apples to apples comparison. And, we looked at config at like AS3 schema early. And so this schema version that's being validated here is 3.38. Now we just installed 3.48. So I guess that's a question I'll ask Ben, because I don't know this for sure. But if I change this to 48, is that going to do anything here built in, or do I need to install additional schemas in the local tool? 3.37, I wonder if that's what's built into the ACC tool. So like if I were going to start changing this, is it going to go out and validate against 3.48? Maybe that's something I'll add for us to look at next show. In fact, let me make a note here real quick. Schema validation selection in editor. Okay, and let me know if you guys have any questions along the way or comments, or if you've been there, done that, and the answer. Drop it in below, because I would love to. I'd love to know. But I'll follow up with Ben on that later. Okay, so we're looking. So let's look for our virtual LTM virtual common Nerd Life VIP. So if I look for that, we've got a tenant shared, our class is an application. Okay, so Nerd Life VIP, that's where we are. So that class is application, and and then we're doing a layer 4 TCP. That's where we come back to, we've got our TCP profile attached to that, and then our pool is Nerd Life pool, and so you can tell that, okay, that's an object that we're going to have to expand, right? Because that pool, this is a reference, so this is actually a name here, but then the pool is an attribute, and we're referencing another object. That object on the AS3 side hasn't been defined, so down here, that's defined. And then we have our server addresses. That's where our pool members are. So service port is 80, and then the server addresses are these. So I'm assuming, and this is an assumption, that if I have a pool with multiple ports, that there would be additional definitions here. But let's take a look at that real quick. So if I let's see, let me change this to 81 and convert to AS3. So okay, yeah, there you go. So that breaks it out into an additional member definition. They can be consolidated because they're the same service port over here, but with a different service port, they need to break those out. So it looks like you can have an iterative list, and it's done by service port, not by service address. So cool, learned something. I don't need to save that one. All right, I can put that back to 80. And of course, we have our members. It doesn't look like it needs to define the nodes at all in the AS3 declaration. So that's something that must be taken care of on the AS3 side of things, not in the declaration. So the minimum monitors is 2, and that was a quick change here from that to that, and then what monitors are applied. We have within here, it's a class of pool. This is a class of application. So virtual is application, pool is pool, and then tenant is, let's see, shared. So all that's going to go into the shared, looks like common shared is where that's going to go. And that's something for us to talk about. And we'll talk about next show about, the tenant nomenclature, whether you want everything sitting in common, or if you want to actually move your applications into their own tenant. And so we'll be able to take a look at that here real quick. So if I deploy that, everything looks pretty standard there. Not much to challenge, and that one is pretty simple. Then we can post as an AS3 declaration and hope we have success here. Here we're posting. I'm going to take a sip of water. Actually, that's not water. Okay, so the F5 ATC schema rejected. Let's see. Oh, maybe I need to not. Here, let me do this. Don't save. I changed my schema version. So let me do something. Let me just convert this as is. Not change the schema version. And post that as an AS3 declaration and see if that is successful. And Let's see. That looks like a 200. Okay, so that looks like maybe we had some success there. Oh, that you didn't want to see that, did you? Let me do this. Bring us back this way. So going back and forth doesn't give anybody some motion sickness there. All right, let's go to LTM. I can remember my password here. And there we have our Nerd Life VIP common shared. And we should have, let me just go to the network map. So our Nerd Life pool got added with everything. Okay, so that was cool. So we had one of our applications pushed out there with one click of a button. I didn't have to build any of those objects, and that's pretty awesome. Okay, so that one was fairly simple. Let's take a look at another one and see if we have any issues. Now, let me just kill a bunch of this stuff. Apologize for not having a clean editor when we started this. I don't know if you guys are like me, but often I see stuff and like I'm always interested to see the desktops of other people when they're doing live streams and see if I can catch anything that would be of interest in there. And so tell me if you know what this is on the screen here. I'm going to click it away. You want to take a screenshot real quick? You can ask me if you or just comment if you have any idea what all that stuff is. All right. And so let's take a look at another one, the SNI VIP. Okay, I think this might be the front end of the front end VIP of a couple back end stuff. So yeah, this is if I recall, I was doing some testing with SNI and having a front end VIP, and in fact, well, I was going to do some drawing, but I had a front end VIP, and on the front end VIP, it was doing SNI listening, and so I had multiple F font small, and I'm getting so yeah, the font was pretty small. I didn't bring it anyway. It's extend script for the Adobe tools is what it was. So being able to automate some Photoshop and Premiere Pro and After Effects tasks. And so I'm working on a little project with Boo on how we might be able to automate some of the stuff we do with video. And so that's what I'm looking at. And there's you could do it natively with that extend script, but also there's a Python wrapper for all that extend script that I've been playing with. But that was the actual extend script part, and I was trying to map to Python functions, and because I don't love JavaScript. I'll do it if I have to, but I'm trying to get the things working on the Python side. It's more maintainable for me because I walk away from JavaScript and 8 seconds later, I don't even recognize my own code, let alone anybody else's. But Python sticks with me longer, so I'm looking at that. But anyway, this application here, it's got a front end SNI policy. You've got several different, or I guess in this case, 2 different things that it's listing for. Down here, you can see the Nerd Life and then Nerd Knobs, these 2. And so if the cert, you're connecting to the cert at the front end, then it will offload to back end virtual servers for those particular applications. And I think this one also has a ASM policy on it. Yep. So we've got a couple different LTM policies, as well as a couple different cert configs. And so this application really is more than just the front end virtual server. And this is one of the things that you're going to have to keep in mind when you're converting things to AS3, because you know your architecture. AS3 knows the architecture of a particular application, and so the application itself is this virtual, and it may reference some other virtuals. In this case, like a VIP to VIP configuration. So if you look at this LTM policy down here, you can see that given the particular let me go down to the conditions. Based on whether or not you have a Nerd Life VIP or a Nerd Knobs VIP, then it's going to forward to that particular virtual. So you guys are saying that font is probably small for everybody. Let me see. Can I make that bigger? I've never messed with the font size in this. Anybody push me to? Is it settings? Text editor. Font. Let's go up to 16. Okay. And can I save those settings? Is that better? Sorry, I didn't know. Cool. Control plus. Thank you. No, just like in, does that zoom my window, or does that just change the font? It looks like it zooms the window. Okay. So the virtual in this thing is this destination. I have two policies attached, one for the routing and one for the ASM policies. And then I've got different profiles here. And then I have the profile for the client SSL profiles for each of those. And then the LTM policy. So here we're getting a warning. Found and config, review the policies for compatibility. Again, I don't know if that's an XC warning or a AS3 warning. So yeah, Josh, zooms every window on my computer. But I'm trying that for okay. Yeah. I hopefully the font is big enough now. Let me know if you'd like it a little bigger. But yeah, the zoom the window thing makes less visible. So I'd like not to have to do that. Okay, so let's convert this real quick and then look at it side by side. And let's move. Let's put it right, and then cancel here. Okay. So in this one, let's just go look over here. We've got the server TLS, the fallback. Okay, and this is another thing of AS3. So everything on the big IP config side, its client SSL profile is for the client facing side. Server SSL profile is server facing side. And this, it's kind of flipping it flips it. The server TLS is really for you being the server. And then the client TLS is for you being the client on the you being the big IP. And so it's a flip in understanding. But we're going through SNI TCP. We've got the server TLS profile TCP. We've got our certificate class, and here it's saying, hey, the certificate, it's already on the big IP, and the common, this is the common nerd life local.cert. So that's great. One of the things, and we'll talk about it down the road, is that you can actually you can embed the certificate string. So if you're wanting to upload them, you can use the strings themselves and just B64 encoded, and everything's good. And we showed the B64 encode on the last show, but you can right click any any string, and you can B64 encode that. Not that you need to in this case, because it's a file. So, but if it was the actual string of the certificate or key, you can B64 encode that and upload. So that's cool. You can do that for iRules as well, so you don't have to deal with all the escaping that you have to do in JSON for all that stuff. Okay, and then we have our ASM policy. Looks like from a standpoint of the LTM policy, that looks to be supported. From a schema perspective, we look good to go there. But again, what's missing is our backend virtuals for because we have this application, right? We have the application of, where are we? SNI build, right? We have that, and we have certificates for that. If we are, everything there. And we've got the certificates for that, but we don't have the rest of that application, which is nerd life and nerd knobs underscore VIP. And so a couple of different things that you can do there is you can bring those open, and then you can copy that into your SNI VIP, right? So we could pull this in. If my scroll will work here, so I can copy that, and let me do a net new. So I can throw that in there, and then I can throw Nerd Live. Let me see, and put that in there, and then also go to my SNI VIP and take that. All right. So I can bring all of these together, and then also, I can then, instead of having just the one declaration, I can convert all that, and then that converts it into a single declaration, but I have all of those things. So I have a class of application, nerd knobs, okay, and then I have should be a nerd, where is it? Okay, class application, nerd knobs, then nerd life, and then SNI. So you have all of them together. So if you were declaring this and you were going to put it in all of its own tenant, and you want all of that to be together, then it will, it'll do that for you. Okay. And so I don't know if that's going to work or not, but let's give it a shot. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I didn't move that. That object in, so it didn't find that. So I could clean that up. But I'm thinking it would fail also because I don't have an ASM policy defined on that big IP that it would then reference. So policy endpoint here is common shared ASM auto, and I don't have that, and so that wouldn't work either. So that's going to fail, and that's where we'll talk during best practices about the things that you need to consider as you're migrating applications. The AS3 config converter is great, especially if you aren't familiar with all the AS3 schema, and you just kind of crank that out from scratch. But it is a starting point for a lot of applications. It gets you the template built for what you need to do, but then things like APM or ASM, Advanced WAF, those things are going to take a little bit additional massaging after you have converted the AS3, and so that's something to keep in mind. Talk about it in best practices when we get there. And okay, before we get out of here, I wanted to show you something if you have not looked at Big IP Next at all yet, Central Manager is something with no license at all. You can just go out to my.f5.com, download the Central Manager, um, and install it. You have to have some you have to have some space. Central Manager takes 8 vCPUs, 16 gigs of RAM, and 350 gigs of disk. So prepare yourself on that front. But you can also do things to prepare an AS3 config converting, and so you can do it in VSCode. But if you rather work in a different GUI, you can actually do this in Central Manager as well. And the benefit of doing it in Central Manager is it will prepare your workloads for Big IP Next instances, not just Big IP Classic. And there might be some things that you would have to back off that would work in Next and won't necessarily work in Classic. I haven't worked through all those issues, but if you want to see if your workloads are going to be ready for Big IP Next, you can come out and do all that work in Central Manager. Again, Central Manager itself is not licensed. The licenses go on the instances, so you can start doing all this work today. And so let's take a look at that same UCS and what we might be able to do with it in Central Manager. So in order to get started, you add an application and you can start a migration. And this is where, let me just do test session. And let's throw a UCS in there. All right, let me get that open. And I don't have a master key or encrypted UCS archive on that. I'll group by IP addresses as what the recommendation is, but you can also group virtual server or group it by virtual server as well. All right. My UCS is pretty small, so this doesn't take very long. All right. So now that I'm at that point, I can add an application. And now it's taking a look at everything that I had. So I've got this, and all of this is ACC built into Central Manager. So what we were doing in VS Code is similar, very similar, not exactly the same, but the ACC underlying tool is the same. And so I have many apps that are just green to go. Hey, you can deploy this now. And so let's just do one of those. Common Nerd Life VIP. That's one of the ones that we looked at was a backend VIP for the SNI service, which down here is like, hey, wait, not that one. Is it that one? No. No, let me just expand them all here. Okay, so there's something about DNS it didn't like, which is understandable because DNS is not GA yet, and so there's no DNS component built into Next, so I can understand why that would be airing out. And then there's a business critical unsupported objects are in there, and then so I have 3 different things that have unsupported objects. So that's good to know, and that's something you'll have to work through in migrating your workflows. But let's just take a look at the first one we did, which was I think it was Nerd Life. So let's go ahead and add that. And let me do next. And I could deploy it right now, but let's save that as draft. I'm not sure I like that. If I go back here real quick. I don't like deploy location, save as draft. I don't know that I like that wording. I might open a thing internally, because when I think of a draft, I'm not thinking of a deploy. But that's neither here nor there, really. Okay, so let me deploy that. Yep, already exists. Okay, so let me go back and let me just hide that. Save and exit. So I have application 2. I didn't change the name of that, but let's take a look at that. And here we're coming into our AS3. All right, and so this, we have schema version is 3.0. So you'll see the schema is a little bit different. This is like an internal CM schema. And so, we'll need to learn the nuances of that, of a CM schema versus AS3 schema, because it is AS3 and it is ACC. How that all works out, we'll have to work through all of that. But you can tell also there's something a little bit different here, in that there's a class of, sorry, my voice is about to give out. The class here is service HTTP. And so, in CM, there's going to be, different templatized, I'm sorry, not templatized, but classes. Then, let me see if I don't think we saw service. Give me a second. Nerdlife.vip. Let's, got that. Convert. Oh no, there it is. Okay, so same. That's an AS3 thing, not a CM thing. So it is a HTTP service class that this application is running on. So that's same. And then I don't think anything else is too different here, other than here the monitors were carried forward in the declaration itself, whereas back here they are just referenced, the monitors. Yeah, so it's like, hey, on the big IP, those are monitored. So from a draft perspective, and this is going to be something different, we'll talk about it a lot starting in January with Big IP Next, is that you don't configure things directly on the instances. Everything is configured at Central Manager, and then those things are deployed. And there's a work in progress with some of that, but that's generally the idea, is that you won't be interacting with the instance at all, except for a very small set of things. You'll mostly be doing things like this with CM, and then those things get deployed. So when we deployed it to a draft, so it becomes a document on CM, and then you can deploy that document out to an instance, and then it becomes an actually working application workflow. But other than that, everything is pretty much the same. It just carried more of those objects into this declaration, rather than just being references on the big IP. So AS3 config conversion is still happening here. So this is something that that you can use. You can use VSCode to do conversions. You can come out here and look at it in CM as well. And the class ADC class is AS3. So one of the things that you can see, I guess one thing that's different here from here, is that you have a class of AS3 up here, and then within the declaration you have a class of ADC, whereas this starts right at the top at ADC. And the reason is that everything on Central Manager, it's assumed to be AS3, so you don't need that outside AS3 wrapper when you're looking at CM converted AS3. So it's kind of something to keep in mind. If you come and use the CM tool to do your conversions, then you'll have to add that wrapper back if you're going to try and deploy some of those workloads back to Big IP. But anyway, that's the CM version of using a AS3 config converter. And we saw in VS Code converting there, And I think that's what I wanted to cover today. We will get into more of the structure between putting things in tenants versus using shared components in common shared in the next show. And we'll get into some of those examples on Monday. And I think that is Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific. So come join me for that. And then we'll wrap next Thursday with the best practices around AS3. And this is by no means meant to be a deep dive, solve all the niche cases of AS3. It's really a foundations. This is the basics of how AS3 works. We're going to start doing a lot more with AS3 in the new year, and we're going to be focusing more around Big IP Next as we get into that. And so we'll start with Local Traffic Manager and Web Application Firewall, since those are already GA. We'll add DNS and Access and SSLO as those become available. And so, join me starting in January for the journey. And it's going to be some video, it's going to be some articles, and we'll build a learning path. So you don't have to feel like you have to be there for every show. We're going to snip the chunks out as appropriate to show different things. The documentation for Big IP Next is out there on Cloud Docs, and there's a lot of guidance even now, but we'll supplement that guidance. We'll do videos, we'll do article walkthroughs of the examples that they're giving, so that we can add color commentary to those that don't necessarily belong in the product documentation, but might need some additional nuance and explanation. So that's where we plan to go with that. Okay, we are at the top of the hour. I'm so thankful that you guys all joined me today. Again, Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific, we'll be right back here for the look at shared objects and working in tenants. Thank you so much for being here today, and hope you all have a nice weekend. Take care. And that's super embarrassing. I played the intro and not the outro. So it's just one of those days. I will say, yesterday I was feeding the dog, and I opened his dog food, and I dumped the dog food in the trash and put the can on his plate. And so, it's just I'm getting better. My brain fog is going. It'll be gone in a day or two, I'm sure. But I appreciate you all. I appreciate you walking through even the little failures along the way. So appreciate it, Michael. No worries at all. Josh, you're very welcome, and I appreciate it. I feel mostly good. I'm just working through the last parts of throat issues. And Jose, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You guys have an excellent weekend, and we'll see you out there in the community.
Well, thanks for checking out that video. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. While you're down there, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. You might want to check out one of these videos over here. And if you haven't already, go check out community.f5.com. This is where all the DevCentral Connects hosts hang out, as well as the rest of the community. It's free to sign up, and we'll see you there.